of shots fired at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. President Trump was getting ready to speak. The room was full of reporters and others, and we again had reports of shots fired in close to the vicinity of this event. Again, new details are coming in every second now. But let's go ahead live to Brent Scher, Daily Wire editor-in-chief, who was actually in the room when this took place. Brent, we're glad you're okay, first of all, but just give us a rundown of what's going on.
Complete chaos here. A lot of fear inside the room. I'll just tell you where we were. We were sitting, the Daily Wire and our friends, at a table right by the doorway where we heard the gunshots. There's still a lot of confusion of exactly where those gunshots happened and what was going on. But so we were sitting there and the gunshots take off and everybody immediately gets under the table. We see Donald Trump be rushed out. All of a sudden, all the cabinet members start getting streamed past us, running out. Some high-profile congressmen. We saw Kash Patel, Steve Scalise, just being sprinted out of there, and just nobody knew what was going on. Let me explain this to you guys. This is a massive, massive room. There were 2,600 people in that room. I've never been in a more crowded gala space. The people that are in there, it was, Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio. I was talking to Erica Kirk, Dr. Oz, RFK, literally everybody from the cabinet, big high profile people from the media, and everybody is just in the same boat of not knowing what's going on. We're in the lobby right now, and just still a lot of confusion of what's going on.
Yeah. And as Brent said, for those just now joining us, the White House Correspondents' Dinner taking place, President Trump was up on stage with many members of the cabinet. He was right next to his wife, First Lady Melania Trump. Brent, when those shots rang out, did you immediately know that they were gunshots?
It sounded like a couple of loud bangs. What gave us the indication, and we were right that there were gunshots, is immediately about 20 to 25, Secret Service guys come sprinting through the room with guns out. Army, like fully armed people, come onto the stage to pull J.D. Vance and Donald Trump and Melania off the stage. It became very clear very quickly that this was a dangerous situation. Me and my wife, we were we got under a table. The whole room was just under tables. It's kind of crazy that we all know how to handle these sorts of situations. But right now, I'll tell you, we were all standing around that room, and then Secret Service came in and was like, everybody out. And we, in a very orderly fashion, got out of that room. And again, this is more than 2,000 people get out of that room. But now the reports are in, from what I'm hearing, that the shooter was shot dead and that Donald Trump is insisting that the show goes on.
Wow.
Again, this is just what I'm hearing from earshot of people talking to me. I just got to say, everybody sprinted out of that room. There aren't that many people still here. It's kind of like a lingering crowd of journalists figuring out what's going on. Very, very, very scary situation. We're okay. It seems like everybody in that room is okay. And the reports that we're hearing, but again, I don't know this, we're here and it's chaotic, but the reports are that everybody in the room's okay and that the gunman who was coming to attack, again, this very, very high profile dinner, was shot dead by security and caught.
We're going to bring in Tim Rice in 1 second, but Brent, before we do, I see flashing lights on the reflection behind you. Do you see, are there emergency vehicles you're seeing? Can you give us a scene of the room? What's going on around you?
Yeah, I'll try and walk over to it right now. There's an ambulance outside. Sorry if this is all over the
No,
place and
you're
you guys
fine.
can't
You're
hear
fine.
me. But here, look, I mean,
You're
this
seeing
is
agents
Secret
all around you.
Service.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look right behind me. That's Secret Service. That's ambulance here with a stretcher there. You got everybody here. There's an ambulance there. I mean, complete chaos. Again, every reporter in DC is here. Like, uh, it's. I mean, I like look at that. This
Are those
EMS,
helicopter?
everything.
Are those police helicopters from what you can tell above you?
Yeah, there. I can see 4 police helicopters around. A stretcher is being brought to a ambulance. I'll tell you, I did see one person walk out of the room limping when we were in there. But again, there was chaos in that room. I think it's actually just people who hurt themselves in the
Yeah.
panic
Trying to get
of
out.
trying to get out. Again, I do not think that any gunshots reached that room. Everybody is fine except for a gunman. But like again, this is 2,600 people diving under tables at the same time.
Yeah.
It was chaotic, a little bit scary, but from again, everybody seems to be everybody who wasn't an attacker seems to be okay.
All right, so we're now going to get to Tim Rice, Daily Wire DC bureau chief. Brent, thank you so much. We're glad you're safe. Thank you so much for the information. I know you haven't been able to track everything super closely given your proximity there, but we're going to get now to Daily Wire DC bureau chief Tim Rice. Actually, hold on. I'm sorry, guys. This is breaking. Brent, stick with us. I'm sorry, guys. This is live breaking coverage. You know how it goes, so just stick with us. Brent, we're gonna stick with you a bit. We're working on getting Tim on right now.
Yeah, you're fine.
Brent, I'm interested in the mood in the room afterwards. Was there panic? Were people screaming? I think that's what a lot of people want to know.
Honestly, not as many screams as you would have thought. People really like kind of knew what to do, and like, look again. This is the press and people who are familiar with these kinds of situations. Again, anybody in Washington D.C. was in this room. I'm looking right now at Harmeet Dillon, Brian Fitzpatrick, like it's all congressmen, senators. John Fetterman was there. I saw him. All of us did the same thing. We jump down and you get under a table and wait until you see that like everything's okay. But truly impressed with the room. Like we heard gunshots and everybody handled it appropriately. And I mean, I'll even tell you there were times where Steve Scalise, who, God bless him, he's been the victim of one of these shootings before where they shot him. I saw him being pulled out. And this is the most crowded ballroom I've ever been in. Getting him out of that room, there were guests standing up to pull chairs out of the way to clear the aisle so that people could be rushed from the room.
Wow.
It was impressive. It was definitely scary, but again, it seems like everybody's okay who was here.
For those who are just now joining us, this is a special edition of Wired In Live. We have a breaking news edition tonight. Reports that within just about the last 45 minutes or so, there were shots fired at the White House Correspondents' Dinner in Washington, D.C. President Trump was up on stage with his wife, First Lady Melania Trump. The event was already underway. President Trump was about to speak, and there were reports of gunfire. At the moment, it appears that gunfire was not in the actual ballroom where President Trump was set to speak. That gunfire does appear to have been just outside. The initial reports right now, we're working on confirming them. We have reporters all through DC, including Brent Scher, who's actually in the room. But the initial reporting seems to be saying right now that there was a gunman who attempted to make it through security. Fox News is reporting that there was a magnetometer that went off, and he was confronted by officers, that there was a firefight at that point. But again, everyone knows
Hey,
in these.
Kevin, sorry to
Yes, Brent, go ahead. Cut in.
sorry to interrupt you, but like I don't know what's going on right now, but like the Secret Service is sprinting over and acting like there's another developing situation. I mean, behind me, everybody just sprinted down a flight of stairs. I mean, you could see the amount of cameras that are here. It's hard to tell what's going on, but you know, again, like I say, this is a tense, active situation. Anybody saying that it's over and you know all is well, wrong. Because here everybody is freaking out, and you know, cops just sprinted down the staircase. What's going on? I have no idea.
Yeah, were they running in the direction of the ballroom? Did you get any idea of which way they were going?
Yeah, that's correct. So we're in the lobby, and the ballroom is downstairs at the Washington Hilton. And all of a sudden, we're just here, and five Secret Service guys. I saw them all kind of get alerted at the same time, like saying this in their ear, and they just sprinted down a flight of stairs. And like, man, they're walking past me very fast right now. Again, this is not a. I'm now more sure than I was 5 minutes ago, but this is not a settled situation.
Yeah. And for those just joining us again, shots fired at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. There are reports that the shooter is down, but as Daily Wire editor-in-chief Brent Sher just said, there's still a lot of Secret Service and police activity, individuals rushing around. There had also been scattered reports that President Trump was resolute in wanting this event to move forward. A number of reporters who were with the president's team were saying that he wanted the audience to come back in and they wanted the event to move forward.
Thank you, Kevin.
It's still not clear. Brent is
Hey,
being
we're
cleared
being
out. Brent,
we're
what's
being
going on?
pushed out of the area right now. Somebody's coming up the stairs. Not sure
let's
who
keep
it
it
is. I'm
there.
going to put my camera on there. We will see.
Is this the stairwell, Brent, where they just ran down?
Yeah, they went running down there, and then they just cleared us all out, and they brought somebody up in the chaos. Like, it's hard for me to tell who it is.
Okay.
But they were rushing somebody from downstairs to upstairs. Again, it's a tense situation.
Are they still holding that stairwell, waiting for someone to come up, or does it look like whoever it was has gone past?
We've now been pulled away from that staircase. Somebody was brought up. The staircase is still being secured, and people are looking at me annoyed that I'm giving live updates. But it's okay, my man. I'm just trying to help.
Brent, go ahead. Stay on camera. We're going to bring in Michael Knowles now from the Daily Wire. Michael, thank you so much for joining. Again, we've got Brent Sher live in the room. He was there when all this happened. Michael, though, what's your take so far?
So not 20 minutes before this broke out, I turned to my wife. I said, should I have gone to the White House Correspondents' Dinner? Very jarring 20 minutes later when I go to read that kind of news. I think it underscores the point. This is a big event. This is an event that people, not just in the government or even who report from the White House, but who are in and around politics show up at. This is a big deal, a central event in our republic, in our political life. And obviously, crucially, this is the first time that President Trump has shown up to it. So even that was a much bigger deal. So obviously, you immediately start praying for everybody in the room. The reports that I'm seeing and that, we're now bringing to people from the Daily Wire are that the shooter was neutralized, but no one else seems to have been injured or seriously injured thus far. The first place, after praying for everyone in the room and the top of the government, the first place my mind went was poor Erica Kirk. Man, that woman has been through a lot. She has shown absolutely magnanimity, grace, fortitude throughout all of it. And to see this kind of a situation unfold after what we all saw last September, after what we all saw last July, gives it a deep sense of trepidation that I hope affects every single American, because we've gone through periods like this in American history. The 1960s were rife with them. The 19th century was rife with them as well. This is very, very dark for the Republic if this sort of thing is normalized. And I suppose the even sadder part of it all is that one's mind immediately goes to who the culprit could be, and it's difficult to narrow it down. One's thoughts obviously go to the political left simply because of the attacks on President Trump previously, because of the reaction to Charlie's murder last September, in which many mainstream Democrats excused and even celebrated it. But then, of course, one's mind goes to the Iranians.
Hey guys, we have another group of people coming up the stairs right now, evacuating from down below.
Yeah, let's go and
I think
let's get the camera on that.
I think it's just Secret Service, but again, every time it happens, it's like everybody's freaking out that people are coming up. And just Michael, to go at what you were talking about with the political left, I'll say that walking into this event, we were serenaded by about 100 to 200 pro-Palestine, anti-Israel code pinkers who were screaming at us that as we were going into the dinner and screaming at everybody. Again, we have no idea who did this and what's going on, but there was obvious antagonism towards the event, and like it's from the same people that you'd expect, who were very vocal and very in everybody's face as they walked into this event.
Michael, I want to let you finish your thought from earlier, but we do have a statement coming in from President Trump's Truth Social. I'm just going to read it in its entirety. Quite an evening in D.C. Secret Service and law enforcement did a fantastic job. They acted quickly and bravely. The shooter has been apprehended, and I have recommended that we let the show go on, but will entirely be guided by law enforcement. They will make a decision shortly. Regardless of that decision, the evening will be much different than planned, and we'll just plain have to do it again. President Donald J. Trump. We also have a statement coming in from Secret Service. The U.S. Secret Service, in coordination with the Metropolitan Police Department, is investigating a shooting incident. The president and first lady are safe. One individual is in custody. So again, interesting to note there, President Trump and Secret Service both using the phrase in custody, not necessarily confirmed killed. Again, that could mean a variety of things. As we know, these types of statements can be a bit vague at this early stage. But President Trump, again, weighing in there, saying that he wanted the show to go on. It's unclear right now if that's going to happen. I'm sure Brent will let us know if that does. But again, for those, Michael, I'm going to get to you in a second, but for those just now joining us again, a reporting, as we now have confirmation, shots fired at the White House Correspondents' Dinner before President Trump was set to speak. Daily Wire editor-in-chief Brent Scher was in the room. It does appear that everyone in the room, thankfully, is safe, but the shooter, according to President Trump and Secret Service, has been apprehended. Michael, I want to get back to you on your point about the potential litany of bad actors who could be responsible for this sort of thing.
Well, even dovetailing off of what Brent just said, the kind of protesters who were outside, the anti-Trump, pro-Palestine, those things are related, but they're distinct. Code Pink, that also is quite distinct. It means that this really could be anybody, some more likely than others. Obviously, the political left has attempted to kill Trump, has excused the murder of right-wingers, has celebrated it and continued to threaten it. So probably that would be the chief suspect, but it could also be people who are pro-Iran. It could be Iran itself. Iran obviously has tried to kill Trump multiple times in the past. Brent brings up Code Pink. Code Pink is an organization that's funded largely by the Chinese Communist Party. So it really could be international adversaries. It could be domestic adversaries. I suppose it could be some fringe right-winger. That doesn't seem the likeliest possibility now, but it's a statement about the state of our political culture right now, where this sort of an occurrence is not all that surprising. It's shocking, but it's not surprising. We've become, I don't know, kind of inured to it at this point. And the fact that it could be any number of groups, not to mention just a total lunatic, without a political motivation, though very likely there is a political motivation, that tells you that the present state of politics is extraordinarily fraught. And the president's statement shows that tremendous fortitude that we have come to expect from him. When he stands up on the stage after being shot in the ear and yells, "Fight, fight, fight." I would be remiss, I hope it doesn't seem gauche, but I would be remiss in not pointing out that this event could have massive political ramifications as well. Just as the attempt, and the very near successful attempt, on President Trump's life in Butler dramatically changed the momentum of the presidential election, so too this kind of a shooting could have dramatic consequences for the midterm elections, for the way that the war in Iran is conducted. This is politics. This is a political event, so we have to examine the electoral politics of it. But this could be a turning point, even in our political culture. Not to mention what it means for the individuals in the room, some of whom, notably President Trump and Eric Kirk, have already endured so much trauma as a result of political violence that does not seem to abate.
Now, again, for everyone just now joining us, this is a special edition of Wired In Live. We have breaking news coming in this hour. There was a report of shots fired at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. President Trump was set to speak. He was sitting next to First Lady Melania Trump. Again, there were shots fired directly outside of the ballroom where this event was taking place. Video shows, we had the live feed here on Daily Wire, and you could see Secret Service agents rushing up onto stage to snatch the president and the First Lady and cabinet members. There were House leadership, Speaker Mike Johnson, literally sprinting out of the ballroom with Secret Service agents and Capitol Police officers. President Trump put out a statement just about 5 minutes ago. I'm going to read that statement one more time for those just joining us. Quite an evening in D.C. Secret Service and law enforcement did a fantastic job. They acted quickly and bravely. The shooter has been apprehended, and I've recommended that we let the show go on, but we will be guided by law enforcement. They will make a decision shortly. Regardless of that decision, the evening will be much different than planned, and we'll just plain have to do it again. We're also seeing scattered reports right now. Again, information coming in very quickly right now. We're working to verify it at Daily Wire, but we are seeing reports that say that the shooter charged the magnetometer closest to the front door at the event space and took a shot at a Secret Service member at the ballroom. So again, we're still working to confirm that. We'll have the latest details on Daily Wire, but it does appear that there was some sort of firefight between this assailant and Secret Service agents and Capitol Police officers and other members of law enforcement who were there. Michael, I want to get back to something you touched on earlier, and that's just the element here of how it seems like how commonplace this is. I mean, we had the attempt at Butler, then there was the attempt at President Trump's golf course at Mar-a-Lago. We had the assassination of Charlie Kirk. We had any number of other events just in the last year that were thwarted, terrorist attacks going on. What does it say that for a lot of Americans, they will forget about this incident potentially by Monday, and they just chalk it up to, well, this is just kind of par for the course. People are going to try to kill the president or do harm to conservatives.
Well, we should point out that all of these events are different, not just in degree, but in kind. Yes, the president was very nearly assassinated. He was saved by the grace of God and a 1/20th of an inch turn of his head. However, as the president pointed out after the fact, he said, this is a dangerous job. Presidents do get assassinated more frequently than we want to admit. The assassination of Charlie Kirk was something different. Charlie was a political activist, an organizer, a broadcaster, a fundraiser. He's a crucial part of the conservative coalition. He was not an elected official. He was not a legislator. And so political violence against him is dramatically raising the stakes. And then for a shooter to come into this room, of course, is to raise the stakes even further. Now, every person in political media, obviously the top of the government's there, but then every person in political media, every person in and around Washington, D.C., and even people, as I mentioned, I was going to be there. And I have severe political FOMO. It's very rare that I turn down a political invitation. I couldn't make it out. There were people from all over the country who were in the political media. Now, every single one of them is potentially a target as well. It shows you an acceleration and a spiraling of the political violence in the country. And then furthermore, there's this question that I think a lot of us are wondering right now, which is, okay, if the shooter was apprehended, which is good. We want to get as much information out of the shooter as we can. We heard multiple shots fired there. If there, again, these reports are probably imprecise, but if there really was some kind of a firefight here, how on earth did he survive? Was he wearing some kind of armor or breastplate? Was it, people don't usually survive multiple shots from Secret Service. So how pre-planned was this? Was this coordinated with anybody, any group, any nation state? Every detail we're learning, it seems like it creates 10 more questions.
And speaking of details, we are getting a number of details coming in right now. It looks like they are evacuating the entire room as a protocol. President Trump said he wanted the event to go on tonight. He wanted everyone back in there for obvious security reasons. That's not plausible, despite President Trump's laudable, willingness to move forward and his resolute nature, as we saw at Butler.
Tough as nails.
I'm talking to our reporter, Cassie Akiva. She says that President Trump is going to be giving a press briefing within 30 minutes. So we will absolutely get our audience over to that press briefing when that takes place. We're also seeing reports. It was just announced the event will be rescheduled within the next 30 days. So again, President Trump saying that he is going to move forward. Let's get now to Daily Wire DC Bureau Chief Tim Rice, who was also in the room. Tim, come on in. We were talking to Brent about his experience being there when the shots rang out, but I'm sure we have a lot of new folks in the audience. So tell us what your experience was like. Just tell us the events of this night.
Yeah, so to be clear, Kevin, I was not actually in the room. There's a second party going on across town. We sent Brent over to the Correspondents' Dinner. I'm across town at this other party. Brent said earlier that, every journalist in Washington is at the Correspondents' Dinner. I'd say about, 2/3 of the journalists in Washington are there. The other third is here. The party ground to an absolute halt when this came in. You could just all of a sudden, everyone was locked into their phones. The room, you could hear a pin drop. Eventually someone got up on stage, paused the music. One of the organizers of the event and announced, read the news out to what was happening, informed us that we were not allowed to leave. They've blockaded us in. And as far as I can tell, I'm getting texts from folks that are outside who are supposed to be here. They're not letting anyone in. They're not letting anyone out. We are right next to the White House. We're in that part of town, so far from the shooting, but close again to the White House. So obviously an area of concern. A friend who's in line outside texted me that somebody tried to cross the security barricade into the party, and one of the security guards pulled their AR. I don't think any, so even here, where something isn't, it's not the shots that happened at the venue. A very tense atmosphere here. Again, it's a room full of journalists. As Brett keeps saying, obviously, less tense here, but still very tense, and people already starting to speculate on motives. It's I would say sort of 70-30 split between those on the left and those on the right in the room. So obviously those on the right are being pretty loud, echoing many of the points that Michael, you were just making, that this is a growing pattern, a troubling time for our republic. This is the third time they've tried to shoot the president, and et cetera, et cetera. The mainstream journalists in the room being notably a little bit quieter. But yeah, it's a crazy thing. And I know Brent said this and Michael said this, but I can't stress this enough. Correspondence Weekend is, it seems silly and trivial sometimes, but it is such a massive thing in Washington, and it's crazy. This is not a time that you expect something to go wrong, right? You expect people to have political jabs at each other, and it's not just the party. There is diplomatic ecosystems built around this. There's parties last night, parties after the thing planned by embassies, right? So foreign governments, nation states, major tech companies. So the fact that this is now going to grind to a halt, the fact that this has been infiltrated and disrupted and is going to be rescheduled. Obviously the most important thing is the, broader political implications, of course, once we realize who took the shot and who, if anyone, they're affiliated with. But just from a Washington perspective, this is like, this would be like if someone, God forbid, set off a bomb, right after kickoff at the Super Bowl. And they had that. This is going to send, so I think Michael is 100% right. The political ramifications of this, we're going, not just in terms of the president and how the Iran war is dictated, but this is going to change Washington. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that.
Yeah, let's go ahead and get back to Daily Wire editor-in-chief Brent Scher, who is still there at the venue. Brent, what's the latest there?
Yeah, I'm here. And like I said, everybody was in that room and we all had different vantage points. I'm actually here with our friend, Katie Bivlich. Katie, where were you in the room? You could just grab this thing. We're doing this live.
Television. Sorry about that. Apologies. No, I was close to the doors where you entered the room, and it sounded to me that the shooting was outside the room immediately. And it sounded to me like it was defensive shooting, that it wasn't an out of control shooting. So I immediately thought, okay, someone has come into the building and Secret Service has reacted. but the entire room like hit the floor. Obviously, the president was immediately taken out, which is good for Secret Service. And then they were going, table to table on the floor looking for people because they weren't sure what had happened and nobody knew what was happening. But just my initial reaction is I'm really angry. Like, this is not okay. This is not a way to live. This is not how America should function. I've been to this dinner a number of times, and this has never been an issue. I've even thinking this kind of thing would happen. I saw Secretary Hegseth coming back into the room. We thought the president may be coming back into the room. But when they took the seal off the podium, we knew that he would not be coming in the room, and they made the announcement he would be doing this press conference here in about 20 minutes from the White House. But yeah, it was not ideal situation, and it shouldn't happen. And I think people are really, really tired of this occurring in the United States of America. We should be able to go to dinners without feeling of violence, political violence. And so it was hard to figure out what was going on because there's very bad cell reception in that room. It's notorious for terrible cell reception. But immediately, I based on the sound of the shots and the succession of them, it sounded like it was outside and upstairs, which is what happened. So,
Katie,
but this is not how we should have to live in America. It's ridiculous.
Katie, I know you have a lot of experience with firearms. I don't want to put you on the spot here too much, but can you just elaborate for our audience a bit what you mean when you say that you immediately thought that they were defensive shots being fired?
It sounded like a succession of three, which is typically the succession that you use for defense. And it sounded very controlled. It didn't sound like there were bullets being sprayed all over the place. It sounded like it was very controlled. And so that's why I came to that conclusion almost immediately. The doors in the room were closed and I did not see any of them open. So it's not like we saw the doors open and there was someone running into the room. And so it seemed like it was outside. It occurred outside. And once the shots were done, they were done. Like, we were all listening to see if looking around to see if something else would happen. And once the shots were fired, they were over. So that's why it sounded like it was a law enforcement response to me, rather than somebody getting shots off inside the room or somewhere else in the building. So
I have one final question. We're going to let you go. I know you have a crazy night as well. Can you just tell us just the immediate mood in the aftermath when these shots were first fired?
Everybody just hit the floor. Like, everybody was pretty freaked out. Everyone immediately got on the floor. There were a number of lawmakers in the room. They were under the tables, trying to take cover. Everybody was frozen. The room is packed full. I mean, you cannot even walk around without chairs in the way. The tables have 10, 12 people. They're packed into the room. It's not like you can even run out. So people were trapped, basically. And so not a good position to be in, especially when you don't know what's happening. But lawmakers were taken under the table. Security teams were here for Speaker Mike Johnson, for example. There are a number of cabinet officials in the crowd. Press Secretary Karen Leavitt, who's 9 months pregnant, giving birth probably next week, was immediately taken out as well. But she was sitting right next to the president, having to deal with this. But yeah, everybody was frozen in place. There wasn't a lot of places for people to go. People didn't run; they just had to get on the ground. So not a good night. But this is not how it should be in America. This is anti-American, and we're in a place where, unfortunately, I don't know who the suspect was, but the bottom line is I've been to this dinner a number of times. This was never, of course, there's always security. There's always worry about that. That's why there is security. However, we never had to worry about this actually happening. And it did tonight. So hopefully we can find more about the suspect and listen, most importantly, that the president is okay, and listen to what he has to say in the next 30 minutes.
Yeah. Well, Katie Pavlich, we're very happy that you're all right. Thank you so much for letting us know
thanks, guys.
what you
Get it
experienced
back to
tonight.
Brett.
Yeah, I'll just
All
say
right.
to reiterate just briefly on Katie, this was the most crowded room that I've ever walked through. I was trying to do a lap. Like, it took me about 15 minutes to get halfway across the room because so many important people and so much security around them. Like, I cannot think of a more chaotic place to have an attack. And just, again, I'm impressed how everybody in the room handled it. Like Katie said, it was just like quick, everybody under the table, let the security handle the situation.
Michael, I want to get back to you. President Trump is going to be giving a press conference here. It looks like within about the next 15 to 20 minutes. What do you think that we're going to hear from President Trump?
Well, President Trump gave us a preview in the tweet that he sent out and the statement that he made, which is, I hope the dinner keeps going on, basically stick it to them. We're not going to be kowtowed. And this is the exact same reaction that you saw spontaneously in Butler, Pennsylvania. It shows you what the man is made of when it happens so naturally. And he just stood up. He wouldn't rush off the stage. He said, let me put my shoe on. He said, fight, fight, fight. So I'm not surprised by that at all. I think you're going to see a lot of encouragement, a lot of fortitude. None of that will be surprising. And no one, I think, really has to wonder about the president's remarks. What we are wondering about is who did this, who is behind this, because the political ramifications of that really cannot be overstated. It could just be a lunatic and everybody, as you say, Cabot, moves on by Monday. But if there is a real political motivation here, if it's a domestic threat or a foreign threat, the ramifications of that for how the country operates and for future political prospects, elections, campaigns, issues, cannot really be overstated. Katie says we shouldn't have to live like this, and yet we do. And frankly, all the political pros in D.C., the fact that they reacted, I don't want to say with nonchalance, but the fact that they reacted in such a, uniform manner tells you that we're not really surprised by this anymore. And that fact alone should shock us.
Michael, before we went live, Brent and I were talking off air, and I told him that when I was going to a lot of the legacy media outlets to see the initial footage coming out, this was about 15 minutes after the shooting had happened. We didn't even know yet if President Trump was okay. We didn't know if anyone else had been killed. And in those 15 minutes, all of the top comments that I was seeing on a lot of these legacy media outlets on X, they were people saying another staged Trump shooting, another hoax.
Yeah.
They were saying, President Trump, his approval ratings are dipping. And it was memes of saying, quick, pull the fake shooting button. And Brent said, hey, I don't know if we have time to get into that. And I don't know if we should dignify that with an answer. And I totally understand what he's saying. I don't like to dignify that sort of idiocy and also just filth. But I do think it's worth pointing out there is a huge portion of our electorate who their knee-jerk reaction is to assume, well, this is fake. President Trump is staging this. And I'm interested in your take on just how many Americans there are who that is their reaction. That is a real portion of our society right now.
Yeah, listen, I actually go a little softer on some of those people. Some of them are cynics and haters and people who hate our country. And so, but in terms of the reaction, the conspiratorial idea that President Trump is staging assassination attempts, that he just perfectly staged it such that his head turned 1/20th of a degree in Butler and only blew off part of his ear. The fact that people even entertain those kinds of crazy ideas, I think is somewhat, I don't want to say reasonable, but is somewhat understandable in that the major institutions of our country no longer have credibility. The media don't have credibility. We have just come out of a massive lie from the government institutions and the media during COVID, which radically upended our lives. A lot of the government doesn't have credibility. So, I kind of get it in a way. They don't really trust the major institutions. And so that leads you to wild conclusions. Now, of course, in this case, it just doesn't work that way. You don't stage your own assassination and have the bullet only blow off part of your ear and end up killing an innocent person in the crowd. That doesn't happen. I get it. I get that you don't trust the institutions, but that's pretty silly. That's the understandable side of that reaction. The much darker side of that reaction is that there are many people in this country and a distressing number of people on the left who wish that the president would be murdered, who were disappointed when Butler didn't work, who wish that he would be murdered every day, who thought that the murder of Charlie Kirk was justified, who celebrated the assassination of Charlie Kirk, who himself was not the president of the United States. He was an activist, very mainstream, very moderate. So that's the really dark conclusion of this, is I won't even say cynicism, because it's worse than that. It's a kind of political pessimism. It's a darkness that reacts to this kind of shooting by brushing it off. And what follows the brushing it off is, they missed again. On some of the establishment media outlets, you saw them immediately begin to downplay this and say, oh, it might have been dishes breaking. Oh, it might not be anything. And that's a pattern too. We've seen that specifically out of CNN in the attempted assassination on President Trump and out of the assassination on Charlie Kirk. For goodness sakes, MSNBC, when as Charlie was being killed, blamed him. Democrat strategist Matthew Dowd was blaming Charlie for his own murder while it was unfolding. So you can't just say this is a fringe. These are weirdos on Twitter. These are people who shouldn't be taken seriously. The fact is, we do have to take them seriously. Just look at Hassan Piker. Hassan Piker just last week was being platformed yet again by the New York Times. Hassan Piker, who has openly called for the murder of multiple Republican senators, who said that the streets should run red in the blood of capitalists, who said that America deserved 9/11. This is a guy campaigning with Democrats who has been exalted by the New York Times on multiple occasions, including last week. So, unfortunately, the conclusion we have to draw from this is while political violence is not entirely within the scope of one political party or the other, it is many multiples, if not an order of magnitude more pronounced on the political left, not just the weirdos, it's the mainstream left. There are many, many people in this country who want to kill you if you are a conservative or a Republican. And so when you have an event that has the entire conservative government in the room, along with much of the conservative media, that becomes a prime target.
Yeah. Michael, I want to get back to you in a second, but I'm getting a text from Brent. You can imagine all the craziness he's going through. His phone is about to die. So, Brent, I want to bring you back in. This might be the last that we hear from you tonight with your phone battery running low. You obviously were not prepared to be doing live interviews, but just recap for us tonight what you're feeling right now and what the mood is there as the evening goes on.
Hearing Michael talk there, I mean, one thing I need to reiterate, and I mentioned it before, 10 minutes before this, I was sitting down next to Erica Kirk talking about, she's obviously going through still a very hard time. It's been less than a year since her husband was assassinated, and it's probably difficult going to big events like this. And it's so hard to think about the fact that this happened while she's sitting right there and has to watch people sprint past her to try and stop another assassination. But again, I'm hopeful at one thing, and I don't know whether it's true, but, there are a lot of media in this room, literally everybody left, right, center in this room seeing what happened. And like Katie Pavlich just said, it's absurd that we have to live like this, and I don't think everybody thinks we should live like this. And I am hoping that it helps bring the temperature down, and maybe we stop acting like everything Donald Trump does is some existential threat towards democracy, and just chill out a little bit. This is supposed to be a fun night, the White House Correspondents' Dinner, everybody's having a good time, and now it is ruined because of a radical lunatic. We don't know who it is yet, but I can guarantee that it's a radical lunatic. There's a lot of anger in this lobby from me and everybody around, but I guess we're just hopeful that this isn't as bad as it could have been, and it seems like everybody's okay. So,
Brent, we're very glad that you're okay. Thank you so much for being with us tonight and sharing your story. You did not expect an hour ago to be ducking under a table as you hear gunshots go off. So we're again so grateful that you're okay.
No, we were just we were waiting for what The Mentalist did. We were all getting ready for what was supposed to be this amazing show that was so hyped up, and like The Mentalist with Donald Trump. He said he wants the show to happen again. I hope it's not canceled and just postponed, because we shouldn't let the crazies win. We should do this again.
Yeah, Brent, thank you again. And you guys can keep up with Brent's coverage on dailywire.com. We will have all the latest there. I want to get to you, Michael, in 1 second, but I know we have a lot of folks that are still coming in just now joining us. So I just want to give a quick recap of what is going on this evening. So tonight is the White House Correspondents' Dinner. For those who aren't aware, this is a huge dinner. Over 2,000 D.C. Reporters were in the room. They were at a giant ballroom. It was a who's who of reporters from across the political spectrum. This is typically a very lighthearted, fun event. It's sort of a roast atmosphere. There was going to be a performance from Oz the Mentalist getting up and entertaining the crowd. And then ultimately President Trump would get up and speak in a fun, lighthearted manner and take his shots at the press. However, in the middle of the event, there were shots that were fired The reports right now that we are still working to fully confirm, the reports right now, though, are that an individual opened fire on, or at least brandished a gun towards a Secret Service entrance. There are some reports that the shooter fired at them. There are others that Secret Service fired first. But we know there was some sort of shooting that took place at a security checkpoint just outside of the ballroom at the entrance of the hotel. President Trump and Secret Service saying that that shooter has been detained. And we are still awaiting word on if there were any other injuries. When those shots broke out, Daily Wire reporters like Brent Scher and everyone else in the room jumped under their tables as Secret Service agents flooded onto the stage. They ran on. There was stunning video of agents with, assault rifles coming up on stage, scanning the crowd for threats. President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump were whisked away to safety, along with other cabinet members, House leadership. Steve Scalise, Speaker Mike Johnson, and others were seen physically sprinting out of the building with security in tow. Again, there was so much confusion and chaos going on. But Daily Wire editor-in-chief Brent Scher, who was there, said that, hey, it was kind of inspiring to see everyone remain calm and safely evacuate the building as there was still very little information on what was going on. President Trump came out with a statement about 30 minutes ago. He said, quite an evening in D.C. Secret Service and law enforcement did a fantastic job. They acted quickly and bravely. The shooter has been apprehended, and I've recommended that we let the show go on, but will entirely be guided by law enforcement. They will make a decision shortly. Regardless of that decision, the evening will be much different than planned, and we'll just plain have to do it again. Since that statement, we now know that President Trump will be rescheduling this event. The White House is saying sometime within the next 30 days, for obvious reasons, despite President Trump understandably wanting to show that he was not going to be deterred by another attempt potentially on his life. But for security purposes, obviously, this event not going forward tonight, and they will be rescheduling it. President Trump is set to speak any minute from the White House. This was initially supposed to be a press briefing, but a press briefing implies that the White House pool is in attendance, and a huge portion of the White House pool was not there. They were at this event, and there's all sorts of chaos. So this might end up just being a statement from President Trump, but we will get there the second that it comes out. All right, let's get now back to Michael Knowles. Michael, we've had barely an hour now to process this situation, but I want to check in and see what you're thinking right now.
So my first thought when I heard that phrase, shots fired, was that it's a typical White House Correspondents' Dinner. I told you I just put my kids to bed, and I said to my wife, I said, I'm getting that FOMO again. Should I have gone? It's going to be a fun event. I almost never turn down the big DC events. Should I have gone? And I walked downstairs, whatever it was, 20 minutes later, and I don't remember. Either I was looking on Twitter or my wife said, "Oh, shots fired at the Correspondents' Dinner," and I said, "Oh, what did Trump say? What did he say? What did the comedian say?" In fact, I think the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, tweeted something to the effect of, "Oh, it's going to be a wild night tonight. There are going to be some shots fired," because that's the whole point of this dinner. This dinner, unlike so many political events, is supposed to be where both sides come together and poke a little fun at each other and they crack jokes. So that's really what the whole thing is about. And it tells you a lot about the state of our political order right now, that one, there's a lot more security than there previously was, in part because the president had an assassination attempt on him, and in part because there are just a lot more political threats, which are driven, by the way, I don't think it's a cheap shot, it's just a fact, are driven by the left. So clearly so that even The Atlantic had to acknowledge this last year. So that alone is a little weird. There's so much more security, but still, maybe we can all have a fun night together, taking shots at each other, taking rhetorical shots at each other. The fact that it only occurred to me that actual shots were fired some moments later tells you that our political order right now is in a much more dangerous position, even than many of us are willing to acknowledge. The president is almost murdered, and it's shocking, but then we kind of put it out of our minds. The president is almost murdered again. We kind of put it out of our minds. The leading conservative activist, the best conservative organizer of our generation, is assassinated. And we immediately, descend into squabbles and think we've kind of put it out of our mind. And then this happens again and again and again. The problem is not going away. This is going to cause some searching of the heart and of the mind also, because I think there's this gut reaction among mainstream Democrats and even many conservatives, which is to say, well, we just need to, double down on speech or something. We just need to host the dinner again. We can't let these people win. We need to just talk and give speeches and encounter one another in public life, and let the free marketplace of ideas win. And it's a point that occurred to me when Charlie was murdered, which is that you can't really do that. You can't have a marketplace of ideas or of any other good when bandits keep coming in and shooting up the marketplace. What is required in order to preserve the marketplace of ideas or conversation or anything else, what is required is the reimposition of order. You need to arrest the crazy people. You need to suppress the threats and the indoctrination that leads people to think that this is all right. You need to tighten up the political order a little bit, because no kind of open society or no kind of healthy marketplace of ideas or anything else can possibly flourish when people don't respect the order of the marketplace or of the nation that holds the marketplace. This calls for soul searching. Unfortunately, I think both sides of the aisle are really unwilling to do it. I think a lot of people want to put their heads in the sand and sort of grit our teeth and bear it and just hope that the problem resolves itself. But as Brent said, the only thing we really know about the shooter at this moment is he was some radical lunatic. We don't know whether he was a radical leftist or an Iranian, or I suppose there's a chance he was some fringe guy on the right, though I wouldn't put money on it. But whatever it is, we know that he was a radical lunatic, and these events are not slowing down, and they're not becoming narrower in their targets. They're becoming broader. And to me, this should be the central issue of the midterms. I don't mean that in a cheap kind of campaign way. I'm not saying that, politicians need to utter slogans about this or something. I mean, to me, this is the most pressing order of our politics right now. Immigration is a really big deal. The economy is a really big deal. Foreign affairs is a really big deal. But the fact that we can no longer trust that our politicians and their advisors and the journalists who cover them will not be killed on any day of the week, and the organizers and the activists and the fundraisers, the fact that we can't seem to have a public life anymore without threat of bullets flying, that to me is the existential problem. And I don't see much willingness to address it, perhaps because the acknowledgement of that problem is too ghastly for many people to bear.
It was fascinating. We were talking earlier about who could potentially be responsible for this, and it is second nature to want to immediately start piecing together what could this be, who could it be. We mentioned everything going on in Iran. Could this be an individual motivated by that incident? We talked about some of these far left activists, the Hassan Pikers of the world, who have publicly said, hey, we need to, I believe the quote was something about the blood of capitalists running in the streets. You mentioned
he also
Code
called
Pinker.
for the murder of Senator Tom Cotton and for the murder of Senator Rick Scott. So that's not even an isolated bit of rhetoric. He has repeatedly called for the murder of ordinary moderate Republicans, and he's been exalted by the New York Times, which is the mouthpiece of the liberal establishment. So this is not just a problem of the fringe and the crazies. The mainstream Democrat Party wants to murder mainstream Republicans, and they won't stop telling us about it.
Yeah, and you saw the celebration of the killing of Luigi Mangione, and we saw the type of reception that got from many, if not in the legacy press, folks who the legacy press loves to prop up as reasonable folks on the left. And you mentioned Code Pink earlier. Worth pointing out, obviously, Code Pink publicly denies that they've received any sort of funding from the CCP, but you have all of these groups on the left that could potentially be responsible. And as you mentioned, there is always the chance this could be some lunatic on the right, or it could just be an apolitical lunatic, as unlikely as that might seem at this moment. But I'm interested, I want to circle back to something you said earlier, that you think this should be the singular, or at least one of the singular issues defining the midterms. What do you think that message looks like tangibly?
I think the message is that they want to kill you. I think that's the message. And it's a very large political issue, but it's a very tangible political issue too, because we've all seen these things with our own eyes, and they keep happening. The reason this needs to be the central message for ordinary, common sense, normal people around the midterms is, one, it resonates with people. Politically speaking, it plays for good reason. But two, it's the existential issue for our country. If a politician or an activist or a fundraiser or a canvasser cannot go outside to do politics without the reasonable fear that he will be killed for it, you cannot have politics. You certainly can't have politics as we have practiced it traditionally in America. And I think what was very jarring for a lot of people, I keep going back to the assassination of Charlie Kirk, because despite the multiple high-level attempts to kill conservatives and the widespread calls for it in the last year, the only successful one was against Charlie, very sadly. And I go back to that because the takeaway from his assassination and seeing all these people excuse it and celebrate it was that the people who want to kill you, the people who support political violence, we all know the polls that the young Democrats are 8 times as likely to support political violence against conservatives as conservatives are against liberals. Multiples, if not orders of magnitude higher on the left and versus the right, depending on how you slice it. What was really jarring for a lot of people was that it's not just some radical Antifa cell. It's them too, but it's the lady you sit next to at work. It's your kid's teacher. It's the nurse at your hospital. It's your waiter at your favorite restaurant. These are people who came out and said things like, he was a hater. It's justified. The world is better off. These sorts of things. Or after President Trump was very nearly assassinated the first time, when they said, just missed. They almost got him. This is deeply troubling. And it strikes me that on any number of issues right now, the political sides are not clearly delineated. They're just to take the Republicans, for instance, there are Republicans who love tariffs. There are Republicans who hate tariffs. There are Republicans who want to go to war in Iran. There are Republicans who hate that we went to war in Iran. There are Republicans who want more legal immigration, less illegal immigration. There are some Republicans who want to decrease immigration entirely. I think that's actually the sign of a healthy party and political movement, because it means that we have debates and we address changing circumstances and what have you. But there is one issue that unites not just Republicans, not just conservatives, but any decent person in this country, left, right, and center, which is that we should not be shooting people for engaging in ordinary politics. That, to me, is a winning message. And sometimes that kind of a message would seem hyperbolic. You say, they don't really literally want to kill you. But they do. They do literally want to kill you. And they tell you that in polls. They tell you that on podcasts. They tell you that in the New York Times. And they tell you that with the bullets that they keep shooting at political rallies and at campus events, and now at the White House Correspondents Association dinner. This is the issue that resonates with me. And I think I have pretty ordinary, common sense political views. I think it resonates with a lot of Americans as well.
Michael, sorry to jump in. We have Ben Shapiro joining us now. Ben, I want to get to you. Your take. I know you're catching up on all of this. What do you think? I think we're still waiting. Hey, Ben. Yeah, looks like we're still waiting. Everyone could bear with us. This is live breaking news. Everyone can see Michael and I not in our normal sets. We were both home with our families when this news broke. It does feel Michael kind of showing off that his bookshelf has trophies that mine does not. Mine is just displaying what bookshelves are meant for, Michael.
Those are actually religious relics, Cabot, but I'll forgive you because you were a Protestant and I'm Catholic. Although I was actually just going to comment in the same way, which is that you might have more books than I do. In any case, a little levity for a rough night.
Yes, exactly. But while we're working to get Ben, I know our team is working to get Ben on the chat. While we're working to get that confirmed,
I believe
Michael,
I'm here.
Oh, Ben is there.
Here he is.
Ben,
Okay, so
I'll let you
sorry
go
about
ahead and
that,
jump
guys.
in.
Yeah, well, first of all, extraordinary coverage, Cabot. Michael, thanks for signing on and everybody for being ready. Obviously, this kind of stuff can only happen if we have subscribers to Daily Wire, so that we actually have a team at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and we have people who are capable of jumping into action if, God forbid, something like this happens. It really is pretty terrible. But yeah, I mean, I wish I could say astonishing news, but not particularly astonishing. I mean, it does feel at this point like it is shocking, but not surprising when something like this happens. And when somebody said that shots have been fired at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, honestly, the first instinct is to say, why wasn't security better, obviously? But the second instinct was to say, well, that's not totally unexpected. Was President Trump there? If President Trump is there, if politically active people are there, then there's obviously a decent shot that somebody is going to show up and do something violent. And I think that, Michael, as you've been talking about, I was listening to it. I mean, obviously, there is an entire permission structure that has now been set up across the left that justifies this sort of violence. There's an enormous number of people. Hassan Piker was celebrated this week for saying that the shooting of Brian Thompson by Luigi Mangione was understandable because he was doing social violence. If you spend eons talking about how Donald Trump is a terrible, violent man, and all the people who support him are terrible and violent also, and are likely to ruin your life, it shouldn't be a surprise when a fringe character decides to take that pretty seriously, going all the way back to the congressional baseball shooting by a Bernie Sanders supporter.
Right.
And we're getting reports, Ben. I want to get your take on President Trump's statement. He came out and said, quite an evening in D.C. Secret Service and law enforcement did a fantastic job. They acted quickly and bravely. The shooter has been apprehended, and I've recommended that we let the show go on, but will entirely be guided by law enforcement. They will make a decision shortly. Regardless of that decision, the evening will be much different than planned, and we'll just plain have to do it again. We since know that the event obviously was postponed. The White House saying it'll be within the next 30 days. The White House also has a press conference that will be taking place any minute now. We'll get to that. But what from that statement jumps out to you the most, Ben?
Well, I mean, obviously, there have been some reports that a Secret Service agent was actually shot in the vest, that if it had not been for the vest worn by the Secret Service agent, I believe Daily Wire is reporting that right now, that there could have been a casualty on hand. I still don't know if anybody else has been shot. I'm not sure if we know the answer to that. Listen, my initial understanding from just following things on X was that the president had initially wanted to go right back in, which is, of course, the most Trump thing that has ever trumped. Yeah. The president is not off put by the potential of people trying to target him, quite obviously, and that's sort of an instinctive attribute of the president. Is something that I think people glommed onto during the Butler assassination attempt, the fight of it. But that is not staged. That is quite genuine from the president, who's constantly wanting to go on in the face of this sort of violence. But again, what I'll come back to, not just in the statement but in general, is I'm not sure that there are very many Americans who, after 2 assassination attempts on the president, the murder of Charlie Kirk in front of all of our eyes, the attempted assassination of Brett Kavanaugh, I'm not sure who precisely at this point is shocked when they read that headline or see that happened. It's a scary time in the country, for sure. And there will be the usual people suggesting that everyone on all sides opposes the violent rhetoric. Well, if you oppose the violent rhetoric, then one thing that you could do to stop that would be to stop giving feature interviews to people who overtly espouse violence and justify it, while treating them as well respected members of your party apparatus. That'd be good.
Ben, Michael was saying earlier before you hopped on that he thinks Republicans should make this issue of saying, Michael's words were, hey, they want to kill you, that should be a core issue for the GOP in the midterms. Again, we still don't yet know who the shooter was, what their motivation was. But regardless, do you think that message should be something Republicans lean into in 26?
I mean, I absolutely think that Republicans should lean into the idea that Democrats have justified violence at an extraordinary scale. Again, Hassan Piker is the best example of that in the last couple of weeks. But he is certainly not the only example of that. I mean, there's right now a Senate Democrat candidate running in Michigan who has overtly defended terrorist activity. The willingness of people like Zohran Mamdani to overtly sort of glaze terrorist activity. This sort of stuff is nothing new. And sure, I think Republicans, of course, should make that an issue. If it's an issue, it's an issue. And it's not even them making it an issue. It's them highlighting an issue that already exists.
Right.
Michael?
Yeah, to Ben's point, we've been seeing this for a long time. I had actually forgotten about the attempted assassination of Brett Kavanaugh. And we recall Chuck Schumer calling for the whirlwind to be brought to the Supreme Court, threatening the Supreme Court. So it doesn't come out of nowhere. Maxine Waters obviously saying, when you see Republicans in public, push back on them, tell them they're not welcome. Hillary Clinton saying you can't be civil with Republicans. So this goes to the very tippy top of the Democrat Party, and we've seen it for a very long time. About this event in particular, it's yes, I entirely agree that we should have seen this sort of thing coming. In fact, this is one of the most prime targets we've ever seen. I think the only comparison actually would be the memorial service for Charlie Kirk, where you had the president and the vice president in the same place, and the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defense, and basically the whole government. Well, that's what you saw here as well. And so it was, of course, a very prime target. We'll wait on even more reporting from the Daily Wire on whether or not Secret Service agent was shot, how this could have played out, obviously who the suspect is, because there could be any number of culprits. But it then raises the question, yes, I love Trump's fortitude, and I love that he wants to reschedule this event. He wanted it to go on tonight. But can we have these sorts of events anymore? The assassination of Charlie changed the way that conservatives are able to speak on campuses. These big outdoor campus events have not really been happening since then, and for good reason. I don't know that they will happen again. And so with President Trump, the question now is, can we have these sorts of events that include the whole top of government in the same place with the political media, especially when it's the left and the right, or are we at too fraught a political moment to tolerate that?
I mean, I do think that is going to continue to be an issue until we start treating people who attempt to do political violence with precisely the kind of disdain and righteous indignation that they deserve. Right. I'm hearing sort of mixed reports as to the status of the shooter. I know there have been some early reports that he'd been shot. I don't know that's true. I'd heard a report that he'd been arrested. We don't know the identity of the shooter as of yet. But if he was arrested alive, it's always seemed to me that it's bizarre that people who are arrested for attempted murder are not given the death penalty. If you're successful, that's the only time when you should suddenly be given the ultimate penalty of the law. So basically, what we're rewarding you for your lack of success seems to me a sort of strange logic. The entire country needs to treat acts of political violence with not only disdain but utter determination to do complete justice upon the people who attempt to perpetrate it. And again, people who justify it need to be called to account. And the fact that there are so many people who are willing to justify this sort of stuff is really a shocking thing. I'm much more concerned. You can never foresee that free radicals are going to go, which free radicals will go radical. Right? There are always going to be some people who hang around the fringes of any movement who are capable of going radical. The question is, how many of those people are there? Not all movements are politically the same. And pretending that sort of flattening all of this into just a grandiose discussion of political violence, I'll be very curious to see what the ideology of the person who's doing that. That's why it's important to find out where these people come from. Invariably, they're devotees of some sort of permission structure of violence that says that the politician they're trying to shoot is an existential threat to them and people like them. And that is why, again, I don't think anyone was surprised at the identity of the person who shot Charlie Kirk. I don't think anybody was surprised at the identity of the person who tried to kill Brett Kavanaugh. I mean, these are people who have a very clear political motivation.
Yes, and to your point, Ben, it's not even just how many of them are there, though I think that's a very important question to ask, but how are they treated by the leadership, by the mainstream of that political movement? So I mentioned earlier at the top of the coverage, this could be a leftist. This could be an Iranian or an Iran sympathizer. And I said, there's a chance it's somebody on the right. I have to say that. I wouldn't exactly put my money on it. But the one thing I know is that the mainstream left broadly, all the way up to the tippy top of the networks, to the top of the elected political officials, they have given a lot of rope to this kind of talk. They've given a lot of sanction to this kind of talk. Obviously, we would say that about Iran. When we talk about the Republican Party, the conservative movement, the mainstream right, we constantly disavow political violence. That would be the difference.
Yes, I mean, one of I'm getting texts from friends, obviously, who are there. We all have friends who are there, and people who work for the Daily Wire are there as well. But one of the people who I know was texting pictures to sort of a group chat that we have, showing people outside the actual event holding signs that say things like "Death to Tyrants." I mean, I'm sorry, someone just tried to shoot the president or people who are near the president. Right? This sort of stuff. Yeah, I gotta say that there's something deeply wrong with a country that continues to play that up as though it's legitimate, so long as it is directed at President Trump.
Do they know that they're quoting John Wilkes Booth, by the way? So
Yeah,
so often
correct,
these
exactly.
people, it's they don't realize that I saw this in Minnesota when the governor and Jacob Fry, the mayor, were trying to oppose President Trump's immigration enforcement, and they brought up 1863, and I said, do you understand? You're putting yourself on the side of the Confederacy. You do not want to be making these kinds of arguments, but it reminds you of that famous clip. They say, "Are we the baddies?" And unfortunately, there are a lot of baddies. There are a lot of baddies who were openly protesting outside the White House Correspondents Association dinner, who platform people who were calling for the murder of Republicans all the way at the top. And so when something like this happens, we can't be surprised.
I want to just jump in, remind our audience, this is still a developing story, and the White House is any moment now going to be opening up for a press briefing. We have a live feed right now from the press briefing room. President Trump is reportedly set to get up, so hopefully a lot of the questions that we are still waiting to have answered will be answered by President Trump. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be any moment now. The press room has filled up. As we mentioned earlier, one of the issues with getting a briefing going is there has to be reporters to brief, and the pool, they were at this event, and virtually every reporter in DC was there as well. And guys, I think one of the big stories we've been talking about throughout the night already, the security element of this, and you guys were saying, how can you keep having these events in open air because of the clear evidence we have that this type of violence is becoming commonplace. The New York Times had an interesting report here. They said, quote, "There was a heavy police presence outside the Washington Hilton, but no security screening required to enter the hotel. There were numerous pre-parties hosted on various floors of the hotel, as well as red carpet. However, to enter the ballroom, that is where the magnetometers were." And we have Brent now joining us, and Brent can hopefully give some answers here. Brent, I was just reading off a report about how to actually get into the hotel, what was the security like?
Yeah, so I was just thinking about what you said, and it's completely true. So to get into the hotel area, you needed to show that you had a paper ticket, and it was just like not something you scan. It was just a paper ticket. You showed it, and you walked in. But I know people who were staying in the hotel and who were asking like, "Hey, where can we go?" They could have just come right downstairs and been there. We have no idea that's what happened. And to have gotten through the actual security to get into the room, being in the hotel wouldn't have actually helped you. But it sounds like that's where the incident happened, where somebody came into contact with actual security at the magnetometers. But yeah, I'm just thinking about that report. Completely true. You did need to, right outside, and I've talked about it before, where all the protests were happening. That's where they were checking to see whether you were a ticketed guest. But again, they didn't have our names. They didn't have anything. All you needed was a piece of paper. So not the most secure situation I've ever been in.
And Ben, I'm interested if you think this potentially puts any more additional pressure on the Secret Service. We know that ramped up after Butler, but does an incident like this further contribute to that?
I mean, of course. I mean, the Secret Service has a lot of pressure on it. Obviously, there are a ton of threats against the president. One thing that I will note that's kind of fascinating is if you go over to X right now, you'll see that number 4 on X is the term staged. Something is deeply, deeply wrong with this country. Seriously, deeply wrong with social media and the apparatus that is social media. That the first thing that anyone thinks, or apparently, or a huge number of people think on X, which is just brain rot, is that a violent incident occurs targeting people near the president, and it's staged. And this sort of trash has to stop. And part of the permission structure for violence is also just ignoring that the violence is real. If you keep pretending the violence isn't real, it turns out it makes it a lot easier for people to pursue acts of violence, because even if they go and do the thing, a huge number of people will come out and defend them. As we all know, many people that we know have spent an enormous amount of time trying to make sure that Tyler Robinson does not serve the time he should for murdering our friend Charlie Kirk. And so, watching that happen is pretty astonishing. Brent, what was the situation like in the room when the gun went off? Could you hear it? What was happening?
Yeah, I mean, I was right next to the entryway, and the security was right there. So there's a very loud siren right behind me. Again, like I said, this is still an active, pretty tense situation. Inside the room was the same thing. We heard the bangs. Again, maybe it was a table falling down, is your initial thought. And then you just see 30 Secret Service people running straight down the middle of the room, and you immediately know this is something really bad. My whole table was under the table. I was the guy who kind of like had his head a little bit up and was giving the announcements like, guys, stay under. This is a problem. And then eventually, after about 5 minutes, people came up. But again, it was scary. It was not what anybody was expecting. This is supposed to be one of the most fun nights in Washington. There were just a lot of fun people. Everybody was in a good mood. We're excited to hear speeches, and now it turned into this, and it's just a mess. And like, I'll just show you, it's chaos here. I mean, not only all that security behind us, but I'm 2 blocks away from the hotel, and every camera in DC is right.
It looks like we lost Brent, but I just want to remind everyone, this is a special edition of Wired In Live. And first of all, I just want to thank all of our Daily Wire audience who helps make this possible. We have reporters all around DC that are getting the latest on this story, providing all of the breaking news updates. We had reporters that were there in the room. And the reason that we're able to get all this... Oh, I'm going to stop myself. President Trump coming up to the podium now from the White House. Let's get to DC.
Expected, but incredibly acted upon by Secret Service and law enforcement. And this was an event dedicated to freedom of speech that was supposed to bring together members of both parties with members of the press. And in a certain way it did, because the fact that they just unified, I saw a room that was just totally unified. It was in one way very beautiful, a very beautiful thing to see. A man charged a security checkpoint armed with multiple weapons, and he was taken down by some very brave members of Secret Service, and they acted very quickly and have just released, for purposes of transparency, clarity, I've ordered it to be put out. You probably have it by now. Put out on Truth and put out on many other platforms. A tape showing the violence of this thug that attacked our Constitution, and also showing how quickly Secret Service and law enforcement acted on our country's behalf. Really did a great job. One officer was shot, but saved by the fact that he was wearing obviously a very good bulletproof vest. He was shot from very close distance with a very powerful gun, and the vest did the job. I just spoke to the officer, and he's doing great. He's in great shape. He is has very high spirits, and we told him we love him and respect him, and he's a very proud guy. He's very proud of what he does, Secret Service agent. And we looked at all of the conditions that took place tonight, and I will say, it's not a particularly secure building. And I didn't want to say this, but this is why we have to have all of the attributes of what we're planning at the White House. It's actually a larger room, and it's much more secure. It's drone proof, it's bulletproof glass. We need the ballroom. That's why Secret Service, that's why the military are demanding it. They've wanted the ballroom for 150 years for lots of different reasons, but today's a little bit different, because today we need levels of security that probably nobody's ever seen before. But everyone owes a tremendous debt of gratitude to the courage of law enforcement, the law enforcement, and working with the DC police, and just spoke with the mayor. And when we're finished, the police chief is going to take over and discuss it also from their viewpoint. But they also performed exactly as they were supposed to. And you see the attacker in different positions, but you also see the attacker totally subdued and under control. So as you know, this is not the first time in the past couple of years that our republic has been attacked by a would-be assassin who sought to kill. In Butler, Pennsylvania, less than 2 years ago, all know that story. And in Palm Beach, Florida, a few months after that, we came close. We really had, again, we had some great work done by law enforcement. But in light of this evening's events, I ask that all Americans recommit with their hearts in resolving our difference peacefully. We have to resolve our differences. I will say, you had Republicans, Democrats, independents, conservatives, liberals, and progressives. Those words are interchangeable, perhaps, but maybe they're not. But yet everybody in that room, big crowd, record-setting crowd. There was a record-setting group of people. And there was a tremendous amount of love and coming together. I watched, and I was very, very impressed by that. But First Lady and I were taken very well care of, very quickly rushed off the stage. Vice President J.D. Vance, who's here, was likewise beautifully done. He was just saying how quickly everybody acted, law enforcement, Secret Service in particular in this case, but law enforcement. Marco had the same thing. Pete was there. Pete didn't want any help. He didn't want anybody to help. He doesn't want anybody to help him, but he did get some, didn't you? And I think you also said that it was very impressive. So with that, I'd like to ask Todd Blanche to come up, say a few words, and tell you it's already underway. The man has been captured. They're going to his apartment. I guess he lives in California, and he's a sick person, a very sick person. And we don't want things like this to happen. I think it's very important that I say, though, and I told the representatives of the evening, they did such a beautiful job. It was such a beautiful evening. And again, they're talking about free speech in our Constitution. That's what it's all about, not just White House correspondence. It was really based on free speech in our Constitution. But I said very importantly that we'll do it again within the next 30 days, and we'll make it bigger and better and even nicer. So I just want to thank everybody that was involved. I also want to thank the press, the media. You've been very responsible in your coverage. I will say I've been seeing what's been out. You've been very responsible. So Todd Blanche, I'd like to say a few words, and then we're going to have cash. And then you're going to go on. We can ask, I guess we can take a couple of questions. I want to thank the First Lady that was a rather traumatic experience for her. There was a lot of action taking place up there very quickly. But again, the response time was really incredible. And we're going to reschedule. We're going to do it again. We're not going to let anybody take over our society. We're not going to cancel things out because we can't do that. We wanted to say tonight, I will tell you, I fought like hell this day. But it was protocol. They said, please, sir, because they didn't know there was a lot of action going on, and they didn't know, could there be? Probably a long shooter, but we'll find out. We'll find out very quickly. They have it very well under control. So I want to thank everybody very much. And Todd Blanche, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Tonight you saw the very worst and the very best of this country. You saw the very worst by the actions of that coward that the president just talked about. But you also saw the very best because you saw law enforcement do exactly what they're supposed to do. And you'll see the videos come out, I expect, very shortly, and you'll see law enforcement do exactly what we want them to do. And so I echo what what President Trump just said, that we are extraordinarily grateful and appreciative of the men and women of law enforcement that did their jobs tonight, including one who was injured. This investigation is ongoing. I expect you will see charges filed shortly. The charges should be self-evident given the conduct, but as you'll hear, there will be multiple charges surrounding the shooting, around the possession of firearms, and anything else that we can get on this guy. The investigation is obviously ongoing and just started. There's federal law enforcement already working on search warrants and doing their job, and I don't want to get ahead of them and don't want to get ahead of the work that they're doing even as we speak. Director Patel and I were just on the crime scene a short while ago, and everybody in this room should rest assured that the Metropolitan Police Department, the FBI, Secret Service, everybody's on the scene doing their job. I know that the police chief is going to give an update from the scene as soon as we're finished here, and I obviously will lead the details of what they have learned to him. But in the meantime, I just want to thank everybody in this room for the courage, and I want to thank President Trump for his words, and I promise you, justice will be served. Thank you, Dr. Patel.
Thank you, General. Thank you, Mr. President. The president's absolutely right. You saw the best resolve of American law enforcement because you, Mr. President, inspire them 24/7, 365. You give them the resources that they need, and they know that you have their back. And that is a changing dynamic in this country. And that's why you saw brave Secret Service agents respond immediately, swiftly, subdue and take down the suspect and safeguard the lives of thousands of individuals at that hotel. Thanks to our interagency partnership with the Department of Homeland Security and the Metropolitan Police Department, the FBI was rapidly deployed onto the scene, took over the evidence response unit, is examining all the ballistics that were found on scene to include the long gun and the shell casings. We are conducting witness interviews as we speak. You will hear from our team on the scene there with the mayor and the head of the FBI field division there. But please know what the Attorney General has just said reigns no truer. You saw the very best of America tonight. The very best unite us at a time of uncertainty, because we have leadership here with the president and the vice president that backs law enforcement, and the men and women that I shook their hands on the scene today could not have been prouder to show up on scene. And as the Attorney General said, make no mistake, we are conducting witness interviews. If you have any information whatsoever related to this event, 1-800-CALL-FBI, 1-800-CALL-FBI. No piece of information is too small. No piece of information is inadequate. We will evaluate it all. We will also be conducting interviews of those that were there. And if any of those individuals have information, please come forward to law enforcement or the FBI or the Metropolitan Police Department. We will be examining this individual's background thoroughly. That process has already started, and we are going to ensure that he was either a lone wolf actor or anyone else that was responsible. We will analyze all evidence immediately to make sure that we safeguard this country. Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, thank you for your leadership. Attorney General and Homeland Secretary Merlin, thank you for your partnership in law enforcement.
Thank you. Okay, we'll do a couple and then we go to the chief. Madam Chairman, I just want to say you did a fantastic job. What a beautiful evening, and we're going to reschedule. And after that, it's very tough for her to ask a killer question, right? But you have done a fantastic job. Please.
Mr. President, I appreciate it. As you mentioned, it all happened so quickly.
Yeah.
And I wonder, especially because fortunately you have experience with these sorts of threats. In that moment, when you realized there was a threat and service agents were telling us to take it down, can you describe what was going through your mind, how you were feeling in that moment?
That's a very good question. Actually, it's always shocking when something like this happens. Happened to me a little bit, and that never changes. The fact we were sitting right next to each other, First Lady, am I right? And I heard a noise and sort of thought it was a tray. I thought it was a tray going down. You know, I've heard that many times, and it was a pretty loud noise. And it was from quite far away. He hadn't breached the area at all. They really got him. But so it was quite far away, but it was a gun. And some people really understood that pretty quickly. Other people didn't. I was watching to see what was happening. Probably should have gone down even faster. Melania was very cognizant, I think, of what happened. I think she knew immediately what happened. She was saying, that's a bad noise. And we were whisked away along with other people, but we were really whisked away. And again, the performance of the Secret Service and the police, all of the law enforcement, I thought was really good. So it was very quick. There wasn't a lot of time to be thinking, because it was a matter of seconds before we were out the door and gone into an area. We very much, and you wanted to too, we very much wanted to continue it, because I don't like to let these sick people, these thugs, these horrible, horrible people change the fabric of our life, change the course of what we do. So we held out. You were there. We held out right till the end, but they didn't want to take a chance. And I understand there was protocol, but we're going to be doing one hopefully within the next 30 days or sooner. And I am ready, willing, and able. And I was all set to really rip it. And I said to my people, this would be the most inappropriate speech ever made if I said, so I'll have to save it. I don't know if I can ever be as rough as I was going to be tonight. I think I'm going to be probably very nice. I'll be very boring the next time, but we're going to have a great event. And you did a fantastic job. Thank you very much. Peter, go ahead.
Thank you, President Trump. There's a report in the New York Post that this assailant assembled his weapon somewhere on site at the hotel. What do you think about that? And I ask respectfully, why do you think this keeps happening to you?
Well, you know, I've studied assassinations, and I must tell you, the most impactful people, the people that do the most, you take a look at the people, Abraham Lincoln. I mean, you go through the people that have gone through this where they got them. But the people that do the most, the people that make the biggest impact, they're the ones that they go after. They don't go after the ones that don't do much because they like it that way. And when you look at the people that have either, whether it was an attempt or a successful attempt, they're very impactful people. Just take a look at the names there, the big names. And I hate to say I'm honored by that, but I've done a lot. We've done a lot. We've taken this country, and we were a laughing stock for years, and now we're the hottest country anywhere in the world. We've changed this country, and there are a lot of people that are not happy about that. So I think that's the answer, Peter.
And Admiral Butler, your team for a while rethought outdoor events.
Yeah.
Do you think that you now need to rethink
No.
indoor?
Well, but then you just don't do events. No, I can't do that. I have to. It is what it is. We have to do it. The room was very, very secure. You know, he charged from 50 yards away, so he was very far away from the room.
And what do you think when you saw the video of how fast he was running?
He was moving. He was really moving. And the reaction time was great. Boy, those guys, they had their guns drawn literally by the time he was there. They were shooting.
That's right.
I thought they were very impressive. And if I didn't, I'd let you know. I'm not going to be, I would not stand for that. No, I thought they were very impressive.
Thank you, President Trump, and thank you for updating us on
Thank
this aspect earlier. Were you aware of any threats? Was your team aware of any threats beforehand? And do you believe you were the target of this tonight?
I guess. I mean, these people they're crazy. They're crazy. And, you never know. He was very far away from me. He had to go through a lot. We had resources all over. We had resources sitting at tables, literally in disguise, sitting maybe at your table, who knows? But we had people all over the room, so he had a long way to go. That was really a first line of defense, and they got him. And they really, they acted incredibly. No, there was no notification. We had no idea. Go ahead, Caitlin.
Motivations from this?
Well, you never know. Now, we'll be able to tell you that maybe by tomorrow or the next day. He's in custody, and they're asking him a lot of questions. I guess they're going over, Todd, and they're already at his apartment. He lives in California.
Yes, sir.
And they're over there, so they'll be able to tell you. Thank you, Caitlin.
President Trump, did the suspect say anything, or was he wearing anything that would allege some type of motive here?
Nothing. No, I mean, he was a guy who looked pretty evil when he was down. They had him down. He was fighting hard. He was in my opinion, a sick person. Who would do that but a sick person? But I think you're going to find everything about him. No reason to talk about it now. But tomorrow at this time, long before this time, you're going to know a lot of things about him. They seem to think he was a lone wolf, and I feel that too.
Are you concerned about U.S. Secret Service protection ability? We saw several of the detainees. Take minutes to be escorted out of the room.
No, they acted very quickly. No, I was very impressed by Secret Service. I mean, I'm the one, and Mark Wayne, you would agree with that, I think.
Absolutely.
I'm the one that would complain. You don't have to complain for me. I would be complaining. I'd be up here right now saying they didn't do their job. Oh, believe me, because, it's my life. And I want to live because I want to make this country great. That's why I want to live. But when you're impactful, they go after you. When you're not impactful, they leave you alone. Okay, a couple of more. Go ahead, please.
That this shooting could have been linked to the war in Iran.
I don't think so. But you never know. We're going to know a lot. Well, we have the best people in the world working on it, and we're going to know a lot. Please.
Mr. President, there's a lot. There's you as well as some of us who have covered Butler experience
2 years ago.
Yeah.
What felt similar? You know, you had the First Lady with you today. What felt different? And you have another 2+ years in office. Are you concerned about something like this happening?
Well, I
again?
can't be concerned. I can only get great people. They did the job. In my opinion, a much better job than Butler. Butler had one weak spot that we all know about. Somebody should have been up there. But even Butler, we had our sniper on our side within 4.2 seconds from a distance of about 400 yards, one shot, and he was gone. And if he didn't do it now, you know, he's David. His name was David. I say, hello, David, every time I see him. David, I like you very much, David. But think of that. Now, if he doesn't hit him, and he hit him right between the eyes from 400 yards without any notice, nobody knew. He heard a sound. He looked over, and there was actually a tree that was somewhat in his way. You know the story very well. And he aimed, he fired. And if he didn't do that, beyond me, you would have had a lot more people killed. We lost one great person and 2 people very badly hurt. They're okay now. But no, that was so in a sense, you know, that was pretty amazing, the job they did. But they did have that one weak spot. As you know, they should have had that covered. Tonight, they had everything covered very quickly. And he was fast. He was running full blast, and they got him before they got any further. I was very far away. You know, he hadn't anywhere close to breach the doors of the ballroom. The ballroom was sealed, and everybody in there. That's why once those doors opened, they didn't want to do tonight. If the doors weren't opened, we could have probably done it tonight. But I think we're much better off rescheduling. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, for you and perhaps law enforcement as well, what is the level of confidence that this was a lone actor? And has the suspect made any statements to police while in custody?
Yeah, I think it's just it's my profession. We have great professionals up here and outside that have been working with us. My impression is he was a lone wolf, whack job. These are crazy people. And they have to be dealt with. We had that in the second attempt, as you know, and he's spending life in prison. Because if you let him out, they'll probably, you know, if he serves 10 years or 15 years, you let him out, he'll probably try it again with somebody else. They're sick people. We have a lot of sick people. But you're going to know, I think very shortly, you're going to know, Todd, a lot about him. You're going to know a lot about him. Yeah, a couple of more. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Are you concerned about political violence? This could be politically motivated.
All violence. You know, I'm concerned about everything. Look, but I can't be so concerned that you can't function. No, I'm here. It's a dangerous profession. You know, I tell the story, race car drivers, I think it's very dangerous. So you take 1% and then take about 10% of 1%, just to break it down very easily, they die. So much less than 1%, 10% of 1%. I think bull riding is very dangerous. If you take about the same 10% of 1%, much less than 1%. But if you take presidents, it's 5.8%. And about 8% are shot at. So nobody told me this was such a dangerous profession. If Marco would have told me, maybe I wouldn't have run. Maybe I would have said, I'll take a pass. No, it's a dangerous profession, but I don't view it that way. Look, I'm here to do a job. As part of the job, it is a dangerous. I can't imagine that there's any profession that's more dangerous. But I love the country, and I'm very proud. I'm very proud of the job we've done. You see what's happened. We have a great country. We've got, I think, the most successful, the hottest country anywhere in the world. This happened over a period of just a year, and we're going to do great things. But with that come risks. There's no question about it. Yeah.
I mean, there's been so much political violence, not just aimed at yourself, but at other members of, members of Congress, state house speakers, you name it. Is that just the cost of doing business to do politics in America anymore?
Yeah, well,
What does that say about our
and
country?
elsewhere too. We're not the only country. You look at this great violence with all countries. I was talking to somebody from another country today, and they have numerous assassinations of political figures all over the world. You look at South America, it's like some of the numbers are just horrific. It's dangerous stuff, whether it's here or someplace else. No country is immune. No country. Good question.
Will it turn that temperature down at this point?
Well, probably if I decided to just not do much, if I let everybody rip us off and take advantage of us. Look, we're leading the world in trade now. We're leading the world in the military. We're the greatest military in the world. I rebuilt it in my first term, and now we use it because we have no choice. We can't let, as an example, Iran, we can't let them get a nuclear weapon. Everything will be peanuts compared to that if they ever were given a nuclear weapon, and they'd use it too. Marco and I were talking about it today. They would use it without even hesitation. We can't do that. It was a shame. I said, oh boy, look at the numbers. We just broke 50,000 in the Dow. We just broke 7,000 in the S&P. They said we couldn't do it in 7 years, in 5 years, 4 years. They were saying maybe in 5 or 6 years. And we did it in 1 year. And I called everybody together. I called all of these people and others. And I said, we have to take a little journey. I see to do this. We just had the great number. We just broke 50,000. Wasn't supposed to happen during my term. Wasn't reachable. Did it in 1 year. And I said, we're going to have to make a journey to Iran. They're going to have a nuclear weapon if we don't do it. We had the B-2 bombers take them out. I terminated in the first term the Obama agreement, the Iran nuclear agreement, which was a disaster. That was a road to a nuclear weapon. They would have used it. They would have used it 100%. So, when you do things like that, you become a target. If I wasn't doing that, I guess I'd be a lot less of a target. But I'm honored to be. Okay, one more question. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, President Trump. Thank you, President Trump. Do you know how the gun was brought into the hotel? And also, how does this event impact you as the leader of our country? Do you think it will change?
I like not to think about it. I lead a pretty normal life, considering it's a dangerous life. I think I handle it as well as it can be handled. I think a lot of other people, you read stories where they become basket cases. To be honest with you, I'm not a basket case. I really take it as it is. I do it for the country. I'm not doing it for any other reason. I have a first lady who's doing a terrific job. She loves the country, and she recognizes it better than anybody. She's told me numerous times. She said, you are in a dangerous job, but that goes along with her too. I mean, it's dangerous for her too. We sat there tonight, we heard that noise, and it was either a tray or a bullet. I was hoping it was a tray, but it wasn't. And again, we had some very brave people doing a great job, so we're very proud of them and happy with them. I just want to thank everybody. They will be able to give you all that information as to the names and everything else. I think we released the names already. Most of you would have it, but his name. We appreciate it. I see so many tuxedos and beautiful dresses. It was a little different evening than we thought, but we're going to do it again, and we have a great chairman who we're so proud of, and we have to make it better. We'll make it safer, I guess, right? But we're going to make it even better. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Can we hear from about how impact?
One in the back.
Go ahead.
Many people across the globe, in fact, are watching you. You demonstrated courageous leadership, and thank God you're alive. All of us are alive today. What are the messages that you want to give to the world that this should change? What corrective measures can we take from here on?
Well, all you can do, look, I don't care how many people you have, how good they are. They can be the greatest people. You have the greatest security in history. If you have a whack job who's got a brain, but it's a little bit distorted or a lot distorted, they can make trouble. I would say, Pete, right? They can make trouble. Some of these people are of genius level IQ, and they're nuts. So it can be trouble. So you do absolutely the best. You get the best. We have the best people. Well, look, it was proven tonight. He started running from 50 yards, and he was fast. He was like a blur on tape. He was moving. They turned. It was very impressive the way they got him, because a lot of people would be looking and saying, it's like a weird feeling, and they would let him get through, but they didn't let him get through. They drew those guns so fast. They looked like Matt Dillon. They looked like somebody that knew what they were doing. What do we do? But it comes with the territory. And if you want to do a great job, I really believe that. And you take a look at what's happened to some of our greatest presidents, and it doesn't happen to people that don't do anything. And it's not going to deter me from winning the war in Iran. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. I really don't think so, based on what we know. But we're going to continue to do a great job. That's all I can do. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you.
Addressing the press and the United States of America after shots were fired at the White House Correspondents' Dinner in Washington, D.C. He provided a number of updates. We now have photos of the assailant. President Trump posted some, again, just remarkable photos of this man face down on the ground. He posted those on Truth Social. We'll be putting those up on the screen here throughout the show. And the other big thing that President Trump revealed there was the actual footage of this incident. In the footage, you can see the assailant sprinting through the security checkpoint past Secret Service agents. A number of those agents then opened fire. President Trump saying at one point that a heroic Secret Service agent was shot, but thankfully they had a bulletproof vest on. We don't know the extent of their injuries, but it does appear that they are okay, and also that the shooter himself is alive and in custody. President Trump said soon there would be details coming out about the motivations behind this attack. And in one of the moments that stuck out, President Trump noted the fact, hey, this is a dangerous profession I'm in. He talked about how dangerous it is to be a race car driver, but said maybe 0.1% of race car drivers die. And he said about 5% of presidents are killed, 8% are shot at. And then he gave this quote, "I'm here to do a job. It's part of the job." He then said, "It is dangerous, but I love the country." Michael Knowles and Brent Scher are on with us now. Michael, I want to get to you. Your reaction seeing that address tonight.
This guy is made of steel, and we all knew that going in. The time when I really appreciated it was after the fourth prosecution attempt to stop him from running for president. So long before he was nearly killed in Butler, Pennsylvania. When he showed up after the fourth prosecution attempt, they were trying to send this guy to prison for life for having the audacity of winning a presidential election. And he just shows up like he had come from his tea time. This guy just shows up completely undaunted, unfazed. You thought, this guy's made of really tough stuff. What's paradoxical about these moments with the president is, on the one hand, he exhibits a kind of superhuman strength. I can't name many, if any, other people who could do that. And then on the other, he seems so deeply human. And sometimes with Trump, because he's got this bravado and because he's been so successful and he's got the power of positive thinking, sometimes with Trump we forget that he's a man, he's a human being. And in this kind of late night interaction with the press, who are wearing their tuxedos because they were at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, now they've come to the briefing room on the other side of town, you see this really human interaction. I was reminded too that the place that this shooting occurred tonight is the same hotel at which President Reagan was shot and where he very nearly died. So even the setting is rather eerie. Trump's ability to just to meet the moment, to present this strength that the American people really need to see, and then to move on, I think is very, very helpful. The one other thing that he gave us a little clue here is, one, he posted a picture of the suspect. We have to say suspect because he's not convicted yet, but a guy who was shirtless, got Secret Service on his back. He posted a picture of that to Truth Social, and he said that the suspect is from California. This would seem to corroborate some reporting that's going on right now. We're not going to say the guy's name yet, but that this person would seem to fit the profile of someone, let's just say, a little bit more on the left than on the right, if there is a political motivation, which is what we were talking about at the top of the show.
I want to get now to Brent Scher, Daily Wire editor-in-chief. Before I do that, also, I know we have a ton of folks in the audience right now. And as we begin to wrap our heads around what's going on tonight, there are still so many questions. Michael, as you mentioned, even the question of what motivated this shooter, and President Trump releasing those photos again, as you said, the alleged shooter at this point. But the big question will be what motivated him. And if anyone in the audience has questions that they want us to get to Michael and Brent, please throw those in the chat and we'll do our best to get to some of those. So go ahead and if you're a Daily Wire member and you're able to get in the chat, feel free to do that. Brent Scher, Daily Wire editor-in-chief, you were in the room when this happened. First, can you just describe for us the scene of where you are now and then tell us what you make of President Trump's remarks?
Yeah, I mean, it could be better. It's pouring rain out in DC, so I'm under a tree a few blocks away, and you can probably hear the sirens keep going off. It's like the whole neighborhood just has police everywhere, and it makes sense. And, you know, walking around in tuxedo out here, everybody knows you were in there, and they're asking what it's like, and it's the same thing here, just walking around the neighborhood. But hearing Donald Trump, I mean, man, it sounds like we had a very similar experience. He said it. He's like, you wonder, was it a tray or a bullet? And we knew pretty quickly that it was a bullet because people came streaming into the room to kind of just address it immediately. And again, it was pretty immediate. Donald Trump says he felt like he was pretty secure. He's happy with the job that Secret Service did. There are some concerns about how long it took to get some people out of the room. And I could confirm that. I mean, it was 4 or 5 minutes after this all started that we were still seeing people being shepherded out. But like I said before, I have never been in a more crowded ballroom in my life. There was such demand for this event because, again, Donald Trump had never gone to a dinner. This was the first event where the Daily Wire wanted to be there because it was cool. Donald Trump was giving a speech. We had good entertainment, not some liberal comedian. It was Oz Perlman. Everybody was excited about this, left, right, and center. And it's such a bummer how it turned out. But, I mean, we watch history. The first black tie White House press briefing. It was just crazy to see and crazy to be here tonight.
Yeah, and I just want to again thank our Daily Wire audience. The reason we're able to do streams like this, the reason that we have reporters all around the country in the room for events like this at the White House doing investigative reporting, and the reason we have reporters that are going to be sifting over the next 24 hours through all of the noise to bring you the facts is because of our Daily Wire subscribers, our Daily Wire members who help support our mission. So if you're just watching tonight and you're not a Daily Wire member, I would just encourage you to join our team, join our fight for truth. Go to dailywire.com/subscribe and you'll get access to all of our investigative reporting. You'll get to interact with all of your favorite hosts and commentators. But more importantly, you send a message to the left and to our country as a whole that you care about truth, you care about sound reporting, and that's what we're doing at Daily Wire. So I just want to thank our audience who's been with us all night. Michael, as we continue sifting through all of this, I want to get to some of the photos that one of our producers sent me tonight of some of the protesters outside of the event. One of the signs said, quote, "Death to all of them." Another sign said, quote, "Death to tyrants." And we spoke to that producer and he said that even after this shooting took place, those protesters still had the same message, that they were still proudly waving those signs and signs similar to that. And that the protesters, many of them were still, if not cheering on what was going on, they were making it clear that they were happy with what was happening. And I'm interested in your take on that.
Yeah, they really mean it. They really mean it. And I think a lot of people on the right just can't wrap their heads around that. They're trying to do some Straussian exegesis of what the leftists mean when they say, "Death to our enemies, go kill the Republicans." But it's pretty simple. They want to do that. And when that happens, they're happy. And when that doesn't happen, they're sad. That's basically what we're up against. So, you know, in a way, I'm very glad that the suspect tonight was arrested alive because he needs to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And if he worked with anybody, those people obviously need to be prosecuted. And we also need to suppress the conditions that have led to this. It is totally inappropriate for the New York Times to be platforming people who call for the murder of Republicans. It's totally inappropriate to call for the murder of Republicans, I should point out. And so figures in the media like Hassan Piker is probably the clearest example. Figures in the media who do that, who threaten Republicans, who incite the murder of Republicans, they should be arrested. And if we can deport some of these people, we should deport them. But we need to show that we will not tolerate this in our country. You know, when the lady who sits next to you at work posts on Facebook that Republicans should be killed, she needs to be prosecuted for that. We need to have order, and in order to have order, the law has to be enforced. And the reason we need order is to be free, is to have a country, is to have our way of life, is to have dinners like the White House Correspondents' Dinner, which, much as I don't like the Washington Press Corps, we ought to be able to have. We ought to be able to have events between the public and the president, and we shouldn't have shots being taken at the president every few weeks. And so we need, before we double down on, you know, free speech or something like that, we need the restoration of order here. And, you know, I think any common sense person will be calling for that.
We do have some breaking news coming in right now. CBS News is reporting that the shooting suspect is 31-year-old Cole Thomas Allen of Torrance, California. Again, that's coming from CBS News. They say that they have identified the shooting suspect, 31-year-old Cole Thomas Allen of Torrance, California. We do know that he is alive and in custody. President Trump alluded to the fact. At one point, he was asked if he thought that the shooting was motivated by Iran. He seemed to dispel that idea, but he did not offer further details. But we can all rest assured knowing that law enforcement right now, they're getting to the bottom of what exactly motivated this individual, this suspected shooter, to do what he did. DC Police Chief is now also reporting that the shooter was armed with a shotgun, a handgun, and several knives. Brent, I want to get back to you. I'm interested, the attendees who were there tonight, President Trump saying, hey, we're going to do another event in 30 days or within 30 days. What was the vibe from them? Were they eager to go say, hey, let's send a message and let's do this thing again? What was the crowd saying?
Sorry, I'm just catching up with that news, and our reporters are all over trying to look more into them. I'll just say, I mean, from being there, what Donald Trump is seeing, he didn't go through the same security we did. He's saying it's very far from the door.
You're okay, Brent. We can hear you.
Sorry, we got a lot of noise out here. They were coming streaming through. That door was right above. There's one staircase in between where this 31-year-old was sprinting through, and Trump was like amazed by his speed. It wasn't that far. We could hear the gunshots like they were right in the other room. It was a close thing. It was scary. Seeing the pictures of just how close it was and the video of it, it's really shocking to have just been in that room.
And Michael, you can chime in if you have any details on the, because this name, this 31-year-old, let's see, this 31-year-old Cole Thomas Allen, who CBS News is reporting is the suspected shooter. That name had been floating around on social media. I'm not sure, Michael, if you had a chance to look into any details on that individual. You can chime in if you do. If not, you know.
I did. Yeah, now that we have the green light to speculate, I was going to ask you, Cabot, if we have confirmation of the suspect's occupation, because this name has been circulating now for 10 or 15 minutes. And his location has been circulating for about that period of time, both of which are now confirmed, not only by news outlets, but by the president himself. The third part of this that was circulating is that he's a school teacher. Again, I do not have confirmation of that, and I don't want to speculate, but since we now have, 3/4 of the story confirmed, I feel a little more confident in doing that. Even without that detail, I think we can start to narrow in on the motivations. Doesn't appear to be an operative for the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. There aren't a ton of radical right wingers in California, SoCal, and if the occupation is right in that line of work. So everything we know thus far seems to suggest that if there is a political motivation, hard to imagine how there isn't at the White House Correspondents Association dinner with the entire government political media in attendance, it would seem to fit the profile of political violence, which even a left-wing outlet like The Atlantic has had to admit recently is chiefly a left-wing, not a right-wing phenomenon.
Brent, we're going to let you get out of here. I know you have a ton of news to cover, but I'll just give you the final word on what this night has been like. Surely a night you will never forget as long as you live. But if you could just leave our audience with just one final thought.
Yeah, I'll just say, I mean, thinking about it and thinking of Donald Trump saying we're going to do this one again and just ready to do it. I hope he does. Daily Wire will be back here when they do. I'm come away pretty impressed, just like Donald Trump, with the fight moment from Butler, going straight to the White House, bringing his whole cabinet in there. And also with the press, to be fair to the press, everybody in their, tuxes and dresses, getting right in there and having an informative press conference. Judge Jeanine Pirro has announces that charges have already been filed against the shooter, and many more are to come. Really an insane night, historic night. Thank you guys for watching it with us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, and President Trump, again, during his address to the nation tonight, calling for that shooter to be given at least life in prison, saying there's always the chance that they would want to do a similar act in the future, if not. Another incredible quote, he said, "I'm here to do a job. It's part of the job. It's dangerous, but I love the country." Michael, I'll give you one final thought before we wrap things up.
I like your phrase, "at least life in prison" here, because to the point that Ben made earlier, this really could have gone sideways. A Secret Service agent was reportedly shot. This really could have gone sideways in a way that would not just be a human, but a national trauma. And the only way that we're going to reduce the frequency of this kind of hideous attack on our country is to punish it very severely, and to not be weak in how we talk about it, because what you're going to hear tomorrow when the spin really kicks in is if the assailant turns out to be a left-winger and to be motivated by political leftism, you're going to hear about political violence vaguely, and then you're going to hear the story go away. If for some reason there's no evidence of this whatsoever, if by any chance the guy's on the right, then of course that's all you'll hear for the next 50 years. But assuming the odds stick as they are, and it's another left-wing assailant, that at the most you're going to hear about political violence generally. But political violence isn't general, and it isn't vague, and it isn't just floating out in the ether. It's very real. It comes from the left, and it targets the right. That's overwhelmingly its character, and it specifically targets President Trump and the people who support him, and it targets this administration and this policy agenda. And we need to look that fact very clearly in the face, and we need to hold accountable the very mainstream figures who have encouraged that. That should be done through the law. That should be done through regulation. That should be done through social opprobrium. The people who have coddled this sort of thing, encouraged it, they should be fired from their jobs. They should be ostracized from polite company. They should suffer ramifications as severe as one can face in a civilized society. Or it's going to continue to happen again. But to quote a previous president, "Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice. The point is you're not going to fool me again." This is a pattern. The pattern is getting worse. And so this, it's good to be strong and tough and say, we're going to move on and we're going to, we'll brush it off and stiff upper lip. That's good at a personal level. We should do that. At a political level, this needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed with great severity.
Well said, Michael. Thank you so much, Brent Sher, Daily Wire editor-in-chief, who was in the room tonight, Michael Knowles, Ben Shapiro also joining, DC Bureau Chief Tim Rice, the full team. And thank you to all of our viewers on X, on YouTube, and on dailywire.com. And if you're watching on a platform that is not Daily Wire, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for just being with us tonight for this hugely important event and for trusting us with your time. And if you're not a Daily Wire member, I just want to encourage you right now to please join our team. The reason we're able to do streams like this, and by the way, when this stream ends, we're going to have 24/7 coverage on our website with all of the latest information, with our reporters on the ground, embedded with the Trump administration at the White House, all around the country. But the reason we're able to do that is because of subscribers, people who put their money where their mouth is and say, hey, I care about truth. I care about sending a message to the legacy media. And I want to support this mission and join this battle because this is a battle that we're in. And so I would just encourage you, if you're not a Daily Wire member, please go become a member. You'll get unlimited access to all of the Daily Wire content. You'll get exclusive opportunities to talk with our hosts, to get all of our investigative reporting, everything that's coming out. And I would just encourage you to please do that, especially on nights like tonight where there's so much noise to sift through. We're going to continue bringing you the truth here at Daily Wire. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is a special edition of Wired In Live. Head over to dailywire.com for the live blog where we'll have breaking updates as they come out throughout the next 24 hours. I'm Cabot Phillips. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight.